started. How's everybody doing? All right, a couple of announcements real quick. First off, he's not paying attention. You're not paying attention. You didn't make my announcement for me. If the Lord lays on your heart to give, we do have a Venmo set up, so feel free to do that. Stop by the shop and check it out. We are constantly updating what's on there, as always. Twitter, I do want to mention this. I'm trying to start engaging more on our Twitter account, because it seems like a little bit more of a used platform than Facebook. I'm kind of not getting away from Instagram and Facebook, but I think I'm going to start putting more of my time and energy into Twitter. Seems like a lot more people are engaged there. So if you get a chance and you're on Twitter, go check it out. Follow us on there. This is my favorite. Don't forget, February 6th, we are starting the Life of Yeshua series. The first one's about the parables. It is from 6 to 8. Here, it's going to be a 6-week series. So we'll study for 6 weeks, and then we'll take some time off, and then we'll come back again a little bit later for another 6 weeks. Just kind of doing in chunks like that. So check out the website for more details and to register so we know who's going to be here.
I just want to walk.
I know, isn't that so pretty? You know that smells amazing too.
I know what I'm thinking.
Oh yeah.
So another announcement: Slack.
I just deleted that app.
Did you? Well, you're gonna have to reload it again.
I'm on there.
Are you on Slack? Okay, so we are going to start using Slack for all of our communication. If you don't know what Slack is, it's basically like a giant group messaging text message thing. Anyways, so what we're going to have on there, and I should have taken a screenshot. What will be the way it's set up? You have different channels within your group. So right now, there's a general channel, there's a Scripture 101 channel, and there's a prayer channel. So if you have a prayer request, you can get on there, go under the prayer channel, and type, and it will send it out to the entire group. I'll send everybody. An email is going to go out this week to everybody with a link, so you can click it and you can join the channel. I was trying to think of an easy way to communicate better with everybody versus always having to have a text messaging group thread going. Facebook Messenger people don't really use that much anymore. Slack seems to be what a lot of people are using, and it allows us to easily organize everything. So if it's a question about a Friday night, you can put it under the Scripture 101 tab, or a prayer request, you can put it under that tab, and then you can go back very easily in each section and see what all's been posted, and you can filter that easier. So an email will go out this week. My wife will probably send it out with a link to that, so it'll be really easy. And we'll see how this goes. I think this is going to make it a lot easier. One of the things that I want to do is I want to try to communicate more with everybody too. Normally I just text Abby and say, hey, send this to the group, send this to the group. But I want to be able to, if something comes to mind and I want to encourage on something or say something, it makes it easier for me because I don't have to sit there and try to set up the thread and in the text messaging that she normally does.
I was just saying, it's really no problem for me,
Yeah.
but I have everyone
So
saved.
so this will be, I think, an easier way to communicate as a group with everybody. If you have a need, something, you can post it on the Slack app. And plus, it's like what Google does too. So I figure Google, if it's good enough for Google team. All right, let's get into the Torah portion. Any questions before we jump in? All right, this week's Torah portion is Vayigash, and it means "and he drew near." Genesis 44:18 to 47:27. So it's not a super long portion. So we should be able to get through this pretty easily. Just a reminder, during this, if you have something you want to say, a comment to add, pipe up, raise your hand, speak up, whatever you want to do. At any point. We always do questions at the end also. All right, here's a little recap. Last week, so Joseph has spent now 2 more years in prison. Pharaoh had 2 dreams and called for Joseph to interpret them. Joseph gets elevated to the second in command of Egypt. His brothers get sent to Egypt to buy grain. Then we continue to see Jacob's favoritism on Benjamin. I think we all remember that part of the story. He got rid of favoritism of Joseph, but now it's all on Benjamin. Joseph has a little bit of fun and payback with his brothers. I think we all could definitely see that the half of what he did was just a little bit of. Joseph hides his cup in Benjamin's sack. And then Benjamin is doomed to become Joseph's slave. And this is the last verse that we read, just to kind of lead us back into where we're going to start today. Verse 17 said, "But he said, far be it from me to do this, the one in whose hand the cup was found, he will be my slave, but you go up to your father in peace." And I think we talked about how in the world are they going to go in peace to their father knowing they lost his favorite son. It's not going to happen. So we're going to be back in Genesis 44, starting in verse 18. "Then Judah went up to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother?" Now this is Judah kind of recapping what the whole scenario was that led them to where they're at now. "And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. We said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. When we went back to your servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our younger brother is with us. Then your servant my father said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. I'm pretty sure that his wives bore him more than 2 sons, but he only cares about the 2. I was like, really? Again? Really?
Well, the kids really gotta have
They're going to need some therapy. Hold on a second, I'm sorry. There we go. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. Now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brother." So we're seeing Judah laying down his life again. "For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father." So Judah offers his life of service in exchange for Benjamin. So we're already seeing kind of Judah's true leadership coming out. And later on we're going to see that Judah eventually becomes the chief tribe of Israel. He's the one that kind of leads the whole jam. So that's chapter 44. That's kind of what we left off at the halfway point from last week. So any questions on chapter 44 before we move on? Pretty simple, basic. It's really just a recap kind of what happened.
It was a bummer they left us on a cliffhanger last week.
I know. Don't worry, we only have one more. We'll have one more portion in Genesis, and then it's on to my.
After this week?
And then it's on to my favorite book, which Michael said the same thing at the end of, and I was like, "Thank you, Mike. There you go, Michael."
I caught that.
I was like, "Yes."
It made me laugh, out loud. I was like, oh.
I called her.
I said,
I called
this
her.
must be a thing.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm gonna watch to the end of Exodus and see if he says Leviticus is his favorite book. Alright, so going on to chapter 45 then. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. That's a loud cry.
Yeah.
that his entire house and the house of Pharaoh heard him crying. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. And this word dismayed in the Hebrew is bahal, and it actually means terrified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
They were
I was
terrified.
just thinking, what does that mean?
Yeah, they were terrified. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. So he recognizes God's divine intervention in everything that has happened to him so far. Which is like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And I didn't think about it until I read this time. But they don't know anything about Pharaoh's dream.
Right.
They don't know. So they're already 2 years into a famine, and now he's telling him, look, God sent me here because we still got 5 more years of this thing.
Wow.
So they're learning of that for the first time.
Do you think anybody knows about it? Other than like Pharaoh and his officials? And
I imagine that at some point, the people are probably like, why are we saving all this grain? So there's a possibility, whether or not they knew to the full extent of why they were doing it. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. Like he's even saying, all the way when you threw me in that pit, you did not realize that you were acting on God's behalf to get me to this place. I mean, how many times can we see something bad happen in our lives, and in hindsight really look at it and say, that was God's hand?
Right.
We may not have the same negative attachment to it, but can we really look back and say, that was Yah getting me to this place? I look at everything that we've gone through to get to where we are, and I look back and say, I have peace about everything we've gone through because I know it was God's divine intervention that was pushing me to get me to this place. So verse 9, hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all of Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. Because you got to think about, like, he doesn't look like a Hebrew anymore. He probably doesn't have a beard anymore. The Egyptians were very, very clean shaven. I mean, even their heads were shaved because their hygiene wasn't great. And so they were like, what? He's like, look at my eyes. You can see in my eyes that I'm your brother.
Well, and I bet he flipped his language too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
You
the
said you
interpreter's gone.
Like,
Yep.
What? Go back to verse 5.
Yeah. Hold on. There you go.
That it is my mouth that speaks to you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep.
It says, send everyone away from me. No one was with him when he revealed his identity to us.
Yeah, so he was no longer using the interpreter. So he didn't have that as his... So you want to talk about... That's why they were terrified. They're like, whoa. We've been talking Hebrew, thinking this guy didn't know what we were saying, and now he's talking Hebrew back to us.
He knows every word. What have we said?
Yep.
Holy cow.
That's why they were terrified.
Ruh-roh.
Heaviest gift.
Verse 13, you must tell my father all of my honor in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. I bet there's probably some crazy stories being told right there.
And probably a lot of, I'm sorry.
Yeah. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, Joseph's brothers have come. It pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan. And take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. So he's sending transportation. He said, let's make this journey quick so you don't have to walk. He said, load up on these wagons. Have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. So not only were they taken care of and saved from the famine, but they were given the best.
Right.
It wasn't like, hey, here's some food, here's some land. Like he was allowed to. They got the best. And the land of, and actually, if you study out the land of where the land of Goshen was, it would have been in the delta of the Nile, in that region. So that was the most. It's really like some of the most fertile land in the entire world.
Right now?
Yeah, because when it turns so green, like they have their droughts, but then when the river fills up and it overflows, it gets so lush and so green that all the animals come to it. The sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave a change of clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of clothes.
So there's a favoritism.
So there's the favoritism problem. But again, let's think of this in duality. That yes, he was being favorited. He got all this extra stuff. But if we think, let's put this in a little bit of spiritual perspective. We're not all the same spiritually. Like when we get to heaven, we're going to be rewarded for what we've done. So there's not going to be. We're not all going to get to heaven and all get a participation trophy.
Right.
So think about that as well. 23.
Well, I mean, too, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Benjamin didn't try to kill him, so that probably helped him.
Benjamin wasn't really in the mob that threw him in the pit.
And he was his full brother.
Blood.
Yes, it was his only blood brother. Yeah, full blood brother. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. I think that's interesting that he had to say, because I can imagine they're going to get away from Joseph and be like, I told you, why'd you do that? Reuben's probably yelling at them all. I told you not to do this. Whoa. So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all of the land of Egypt. And his heart became numb, for he did not believe them. And his heart became numb. It actually skipped a beat, almost stopped.
Oh, Lord, don't.
Some other translation I was looking at said for his heart failed him or something like that. It was like
Mine says stunned.
Stunned, yeah.
I said no.
Numb, yeah. So, but the actual Hebrew right there is it literally skipped a beat. He could have died right then because of this news they told him. But this is the saving grace. But when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. It's he almost died right then, and he's like, okay, I believe you. Okay, I got you. And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. And that is chapter 45. Yeah, like I said, this one's not, this isn't a super long. Any questions on 45?
Really short.
Yeah. Any questions before we keep going?
Just, that was probably a really nice, healing for all of them.
Yeah.
Because Joseph really could have, he could have killed his brothers. And just kept Benjamin.
Yeah. Really.
it's such a challenge to us to read this and apply it and say, hey, when I am in the pit, can I fix my mind to be content that God's in charge of my life, not me, and I don't know where this is going, good or bad. can I be content there?
Yeah.
Not saying that he was content, but like when you look at it, the whole picture, you can apply it and say, hey, I've got a whole picture too.
Yes. Well, and it's funny too because I was singing that song, "Great Is Thy Faithfulness" today, and one of the verses in "Great Is Thy Faithfulness" says, "As thou hast been, forever you'll be." And I got thinking about that, and I was like, it's not that it's just, oh yeah, yes, I'm happy, great is your faithfulness. It's is His faithfulness, because God doesn't change. So if you can say He's faithful in the good times, well, guess what? When you're in the pit, His faithfulness is still great. You know, when something's going wrong, His faithfulness is still great. And Joseph definitely figured out a way to wrap his brain around that, to be able to see God's divine intervention.
And the great forgiveness
Yes.
of his brothers here is extremely challenging.
Oh, yeah.
As well. Like wow.
Because he could have, like you said, I mean, he could have done anything he wanted. He's basically Pharaoh. He could have repaid them all their debts, and physically would have been justified in doing so.
He even said I have become father to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's no small position.
No. Not at all. All right, let's continue on. If nobody else has a question. 46. So Israel set out along with everything that belonged to him. When he came to Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. So why is Beersheba important? Does anybody remember anything about Beersheba?
It's a place.
We've talked about this. Quite a few times. So Beersheba is where Abraham made a covenant with Yah there. This is where Isaac made a covenant with Yah. And this is the same place where Jacob had his dream, the ladder dream.
He wrestled with Yah there too.
In that same area. So, verse 2. In visions of the night, God said to Israel, Jacob, Jacob, Hineni, which just means here I am. But we talked about this a few weeks ago, that this idea of Hineni, most of the time it's translated here I am, but it's more like the Shema, where it's also a call to action. It's not just, hey, I'm here. It's, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to do what you need. He said, I am God, the God of your father. He said, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will turn you into a great nation there. Why would... I put Isaac. It's supposed to be Jacob. That's a typo on my part. So why would Jacob be afraid to go down to Egypt? Joseph's there. There's famine. The famine is taken over in Canaan. Why would he be afraid to go down to Egypt?
Earlier it said that Egyptians wouldn't even dine with Hebrews, so clearly they're not fans of them.
God
True.
said settle in Canaan.
Yeah. So a couple things that are probably on his mind. Genesis 26, 22 through 3, we talked about this in one of our previous portions. Then Adonai appeared to him, this is Abraham, saying, this is Isaac. Do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land about which I tell you. Live as an outsider in the land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and to your seed I give these land, and I will confirm my pledge that I swore to Abraham your father. So Abraham went down to Egypt. Isaac was told not to go down to Egypt. So I imagine Jacob is probably confused. Like, wait a second. Granddad went down there, but God told Dad not to go down to Egypt. Is this what we're supposed to be doing? Like, just because there seems to be salvation, food there, they're not going to die if they go to Egypt because they can actually eat. Jacob is probably like, am I supposed to go down there? And then this is the other verse that came to my mind. Genesis 15, 12 through 13. When the sun was about to set and a deep sleep fell on Abraham, behold, terror of great darkness was falling upon him. Then he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. So is this in the back of his mind? Like, I'm leaving the land that was supposedly our promised land, and it says that in time, our seed is going to be oppressed for 400 years. And so I can imagine he's probably like, am I starting this? Like, is this leading to what this prophecy was? Yes, it absolutely was, but it is God's divine intervention, and you can't avoid it.
They didn't start off oppressed.
Well,
It grew into that.
technically, well, we'll see that in a minute. Technically, they kind of did start off oppressed because of what's going to happen in chapter 47.
So it wasn't very long. Okay, next time.
No, what? We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay,
Yes.
fine.
Yeah, when we get into 47, you'll see kind of what we're going with that. So verse 4, I myself will go down with you to Egypt. This is Yah talking. And I myself will also most certainly bring you up. Joseph will put his hands on your eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and Israel's son carried Jacob, their father, their children, and their wives in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They also took their livestock and their possessions they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt, Jacob and all his offspring with him. His sons and his grandsons with him, his daughters and his granddaughters, and all his offspring he brought with him to Egypt. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt. Pay attention, Stephanie, we got some names coming up in this one. You might find something you like. Jacob and his sons, Jacob's firstborn Reuben, and Reuben's son Hanok, Pelu, Hezron, and Carmi. Carmi,
I thought it said Carney.
Simeon's sons, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Yakin, Zokar, Shaul, and the son of Shaul, the son of the Canaanite woman. Levi's son, Gershon, Gohath, and Merari. Judah's sons, Er, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. Er died along with Onan in the land of Canaan. Perez's sons were Hezron and Hamul. Issachar's sons, Tola, Puvah, Eob, Shimron. Zebulun's sons, Sered, Elon, Jaleel. These are Leah's sons, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, along with his daughter Dinah. The tally of all his sons and daughters was 33 people. Gad's sons, Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esborn, Edri, Erodi, Ereli. Asher's sons, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, Sarah, their sister. Beriah's sons were Hebar and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter. She bore these to Jacob, 16 people. The sons of Jacob's wife, Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. Manasseh and Ephraim were born to Joseph in the land of Egypt. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Benjamin's sons, Bela, Bekar, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ahi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard.
I like those.
Mupim and Hupim. Mupim and Hupim.
Yep.
Mupim, Hupim, Coral.
There you go, Steph.
These are Rachel's sons who were born to Jacob. The tally of all the people was 14. The sons of Dan, Hushim. Naphtali's sons, Yakziel, Guni, Yezer, Shilem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and bore these to Jacob. The tally of all the people was 7. All the people belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, those coming from his loins, not counting the wives of Jacob's sons, the tally of the people were 66. The sons of Joseph were born to him in Egypt was a tally of 2 people. The tally of all the peoples belonging to Jacob's house who came to Egypt was 70. So we're seeing they're already turning into a nation.
70 people.
Like this is already beginning to they're already beginning to expand. And
To add these up by any chance?
yes, and don't yes, there's a whole yes.
Oh.
There's a whole thing with numbers don't match up in this chapter and
No, I was just curious as to how many people it was.
136.
70.
Oh, that was
All the people belonging to Jacob's house came to Egypt was 70.
Makes me wonder if it's just the men they counted.
But so you've also got like servants and slaves and other people. Yeah. So some that I've studied say that there was possibly already 200 people when they went down. So they're already turning into a small village that will eventually become a nation easily. So Yah promised them they would become a great nation. But why wouldn't Yah bring them back to Canaan to become the great nation? So they're already becoming a nation. So if they're going to turn into a nation while they're there, because it's part of the blessing is that he would make them a great nation. We're going to see in a minute that they're there. They already start to prosper and multiply. So why wouldn't he bring them back to the promised land first, before he made them a great nation.
Because you would have missed out on the whole story.
I know. We only had the story.
I mean, a couple of thoughts. There weren't enough of them to conquer the peoples there. Not that, yeah, I couldn't have done that without all the people, but, you know, a good army wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah.
And then, two...
Well, they were already residing in the land. So they could have continued to grow there before they had to worry about conquering other places.
And then, two, they left... I'll back up. Egypt needed humbling as an extremely wicked nation. So I think that was a big one. And then third, Yah gave them all the provisions out of Egypt when they left.
Yes.
So he set them up real good.
We see divine intervention all along the way, so we can already assume that there's divine intervention taking place. That's why they're there. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah. Maybe also, like, once they get there, they start getting involved in Egyptian ways. So maybe it could have been smoother if they stayed set apart. But because they intermingled and mixed, there's a consequence for that sin.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
So there's also this is Genesis 15. We've already read this, and I didn't really touch on it when we read it the first time, because it kind of ties in more into Exodus, but I wanted to bring it up today. So Genesis 15, then he said to Abram, know for certain, and this is the continuation of what we read earlier about them being there for 400 years. Know for certain that your seed will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But I am going to judge the nation that they will serve. Afterward, so you pointed that out. He's got to judge Egypt. So they're in Egypt. They're going to serve Egypt. He's judging Egypt. Afterward, they will go out with many possessions. But you will come to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age. Then, in the fourth generation, 400 years, they will return here. And this is the key. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. The Amorites is where they would eventually land and become the promised land. So, there's this idea that Yah is giving the Amorites time to repent. And if not, he's going to allow the nation that they become to overthrow them. Interesting little thing there.
Also challenging, looking at that, you know, we see Joseph, he's in the pit and then he's raised all the way up. Well, these poor people are part of the pit the whole time, their whole lives. And so who are we to think we're going to get raised up in our lives? We might be in the pit for 400 years.
I mean,
that might be where our story is.
And so we think, you know, a lot of times we see the timeline stuff in the Bible, and we think, oh, well, they lived a lot longer. At this point, their lifespan wasn't as long. I mean, Jacob only lives to be 147. We're going to see that in a minute. So this is 4 generations. So the generation that went in did not ever get to see the exaltation of the nation. The second generation probably didn't get to see the third generation probably didn't get to see the exaltation of the nation. So it's that last generation which is the only one. So yeah, that's a good point, Erica. Like just because we're doing the right thing doesn't necessarily mean that part of Yah's divine purpose for us is to have this huge exaltation like Joseph did. Verse 28, now he sent Judah before him to Joseph to show him the way to Goshen when they came to the land of Goshen. So who was sent first?
Judah. So
Judah sent first. We talked about his leadership earlier, and now he's showing that. Now he's getting the opportunity to kind of flex that leadership skills. He's like, you go first and show us the way. So I think that this is a great picture, though, of the Jews leading us to Yeshua. So a lot of times coming out of mainstream Christianity, learning stuff about the Torah and this road, this walk, it's so easy to be like, oh, the Jews screwed everything up. Yeah, except for the Jews are the whole reason we even have the Torah. If it wasn't for the Jews, we wouldn't have the first half of the Bible. Because the early church fathers would have kicked it to the curb and be like, oh, we don't need that. Let's just read Matthew on.
Yeah, I mean, the Jews, like, overprotected it.
Overprotected it. So much so that they kind of messed up and had some errors.
Yep,
but it was
preserved.
Exactly. And that's why, a lot of times I'll talk about the Talmud and the Mishnah and the oral law and the stuff that the Jews hold so dear And I never want to like kick dirt on that, because it is, yes, they had some things that they did in error, but it's because of them that so many things were preserved. So I think there's some respect to give in that. Verse 29, so Joseph harnessed his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell upon his neck and wept on his neck for some time. They could probably still hear that back in Egypt. He was probably crying so hard. Then Israel said to Joseph, at this time I'm ready to die after seeing your face in person, for you're still alive. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I'll go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. Then the men are shepherds, for they've been men who handle livestock, who have brought their flocks and cattle and everything that they possess. So when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? So Joseph is giving them some instruction right now. You must say, your servants have been men who handle livestock since the time of our youth until now, both we and our fathers, so that you can live in the land of Goshen, because every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians. This word loathsome in the Hebrew is to'abah, and it literally means they were an abomination. They were disgusting. They were looked down upon for being just shepherds. So that's why he said, tell them that you have livestock, because that's sheep and cows and other stuff.
I mean, that really just confirms the whole idea that it was shepherds who Yah told when Yeshua was going to be born.
Yeah.
Like, he likes to do things opposite.
Yeah.
And go tell the important people. He went and told the least of these.
Yep.
Is it so they wouldn't be a threat?
I think it was more of like, it was kind of like a, oh, you're shepherds? That's a disgusting occupation. Like,
I think it was to make sure they got the land. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you can go over there only because you're Joseph's people.
Maybe because he's a little, maybe embarrassed a little bit. I say, hey.
I think it could be that. Yeah, I think it was more of like, hey, look, they look down on shepherds here. So in order to make sure your chances are better and not ruining something, tell them you have livestock. That would include it all. Because they did. But at this point, he sent donkeys and all kinds of other stuff to them. Yeah. So he's got more than just sheep. But their occupation was a shepherd. I mean, it would be like it'd be kind of like if you were a garbage truck driver, you know, and you're meeting somebody and he was like, hey, tell him you're an industrial worker, you know. Yeah.
You're not a custodian, you're building maintenance.
Yeah, exactly. Elevate it just a little bit. Get your chances are better. So any questions on chapter 46? That's wrapped up 46. We're cruising through this one.
It's not even 8 o'clock yet.
I know. There's not as much on this one.
Just that I think it's odd that, I mean, I'm sure in Egypt they used bull and ate lamb.
They may not have ate much lamb.
Yeah, I guess.
They could have been more. I know they had lots of cows.
Yeah, maybe they were more into beef.
Yeah. There's no telling. All right, any other questions before we go to 47? 47? This is our last chapter. We're rolling through this one. This is good. We'll have a lot of discussion time at the end. All right, 47. Verse 1, Then Joseph came and informed Pharaoh, my father and my brothers and their flocks and their cattle, he made sure to throw that in there, and everything that belongs to them have come from the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. From among his brothers, he took 5 men and presented them before Pharaoh. And this came to my mind when I was reading this. He took 5, and in the parable of the 10 virgins, and if you come to our Yeshua study on the parables, we're going to talk about this. But in the parable of the 10 virgins that we find in Matthew, 5 of them were accepted into it. 5 of them were counted righteous. 5 had oil. So I thought it was kind of neat play that he took 5. Remember, every time we're reading these stories in the Torah, we're looking for the shadows and the picture types of what's to come. Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? So they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. You didn't listen to them. Then they said to Pharaoh, we came to dwell temporarily in the land. That's not going to be very temporarily. Since there is no pasture for the flocks, that belong to your servants. For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. So now please let your servants live in the land of Goshen. Pharaoh said to Joseph, saying, your father and your brothers came to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. If you know of any capable men among them, make them overseers of the livestock over those that are mine.
Wow.
So he's like, if any of your brothers or any of the people in your clan, your tribe, are really good herdsmen, put them over mine. Let them take care of mine too. Which is kind of, I didn't even think about this, but it kind of goes back to when Jacob was serving Laban. And Laban's like, hey, you can take care of my sheep too. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked Jacob, how many days are the years of your life? So I thought it was an interesting question. Why would he ask him his age? I looked this up. The average lifespan of an ancient Egyptian was 22 to 25 years.
What is?
Yeah, 35 to 37 years for a female was the average lifespan. So the fact that he's 130, he's already told me he's 130 years old. So he continues on, check this out. The days of years of my sojourn are 130 years. Few and evil have been these days. Few. He's saying few. 130 years is few. Moreover, the days of the years of my life have not attained to the days of the years of the lives of my fathers in the days of their sojourn. So he's saying, look, I'm 130 years old, but this is nothing compared to how old my ancestors got. So Pharaoh would have been like, you're how old? You're 130 years old? That's impossible. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from Pharaoh's presence. Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them property in the land of Egypt, in the best part of the land, in the land of Ramses, just as Pharaoh commanded. And Joseph supported his father and his brothers and his father's entire household with food for the mouths of the little ones. Now there was no, this is when the story is going to start getting interesting. And this is what we're going to talk about, what you were talking about earlier, Bib.
Okay.
Now there was no food in all the land because the famine was very severe. Both the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. So now the famine has gone from mainly in the area of Canaan, and it's crept down to where now all of Egypt is engulfed. Joseph collected all the money that could be found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain that they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Then the money of the land of Egypt and of the land of Canaan ran out, and all of Egypt came to Joseph, saying, give us food. Why should we die in front of you? Because the money is gone. Oh, dang it.
What do you do?
Hold on. All right. Joseph said, give your livestock, and I'll give it to you for your livestock if the money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for horses, for flocks of sheep, for herds of cattle, and for donkeys. He provided them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year came to an end, so now the year's gone by, they've given up, they don't have any more livestock. They've given up all their livestock. They came to him in the second year and said to him, we won't hide from my lord that the money has run out, and the livestock and the domestic animals are my lord's. There's nothing left in my lord's sight except our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Sorry, this thing's freaking out. Buy us and our land for food. We and our land will become Pharaoh's slaves. Provide seed so that we may live and not die, and the land won't be deserted. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, because the Egyptians, each one, sold his field, for the famine overcame them. Thus the land became Pharaoh's. Do you see how we're starting to put this kind of pieces together, leading up to 2 weeks from now when we start into Exodus? So we're kind of laying the foundation of what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. He made the people slaves from one end of Egypt's border to the other. Only he did not buy the land belonging to the priests, because the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they ate their allotment that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their land. This is not in my notes, and we're going to get into this when we get into Exodus, but I think this is a precursor of why Yah eventually tells the Levites they're not allowed to have any land. Because he's differentiating them from how the other cultures operated. Right here, when I saw this, I was like, wait a second. Eventually, we're going to learn the exact opposite of the Israelites when they get into the wilderness, that their priests weren't allowed to own land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you, so that you can sow the land." So, this idea that's portrayed here, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, we see the word slave a lot, but this is actually more of the idea of a bondservant, and in a minute we're going to talk about kind of what the difference is and how that plays out. "During the harvest you must give a fifth part to Pharaoh, and 4/5 will be for you, for seed for the field, and for your food, and for those in your houses, and for food for your little ones." "You saved our lives," they said. "We find favor in the eyes of my Lord, and will be Pharaoh's slaves." Again, let's not use the American idea of slave when we see this word. "So Joseph set it as a statute until this very day concerning the land of Egypt. A fifth part goes to Pharaoh. Only the priest's land did not become Pharaoh's. Meanwhile, Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, acquired property in it, and were fruitful and multiplied greatly." So let's talk about this idea of servant, slave, bondservant. So we see these are the three main things that we're going to see in Scripture, the terms that are used. Servant, slave, bondservant. So what's the difference between them? So first one we'll talk about is a servant. So anytime you see the word servant, and I'm not talking about our English translation, because the English translations will translate them all similarly a lot of times. This is a hired hand. They have limited rights, but they're paid a wage. So this was actually a sought-after position, a well-respected position. Like, if you could become a servant to someone, you actually got paid. It was like a blue-collar job.
Like Downton Abbey.
Yes. Yes, to be the servant in a house of a well-to-do person was a very respectable job to have. Yes. The length of service was determined by the master and the job. So this could be something that that was your job and you did that your whole life. This could be something you were hired on for a specific time length for a specific job. Then we have a slave. So now a slave, this was forced servitude. This was like to serve someone, but they were forced to do it. You had no rights and you didn't get paid. Typically, these were people that were taken from somewhere. That's why it says that Joseph was sold into slavery. That was forced. He didn't have a choice. He got taken.
You get like food and clothes. And
maybe.
Maybe.
It depends on how you were taken care of. The length of service was determined by the master and usually was indefinite. If you got bought as a slave, you were a slave. That was it.
Unless you like what, right away?
Yeah.
Which
They
would not
probably
be
track
good.
you down and
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
So then the third one is a bondservant. Now this one's a little bit interesting. It's different because this is elective servitude. There was still no right. The only rights you had were what the master gave you. But this was usually enslavement to pay a debt. So then you couldn't go to the bank and I made a mistake and I owe somebody $5,000 and go get a personal loan, pay them, and then you pay the bank back. No. If you didn't have the money, you still had to pay.
Right.
And so the way you paid was you worked for that payment.
sort of like debtor's prison. They used
Yes.
to have in England.
Yes. So the master, on this one, it's a little bit different because the master could choose your treatment. So typically they were treated better than a slave, but probably, depending on the master, maybe not as good as a servant. Because a servant was a hired hand. They wanted you to stay there and do your job good. The length of the length of service was determined by your debt. So this is, when we're looking at what's going on in Egypt right now, they're basically all being turned into bondservants. They need food. They don't have money. So I'm giving you land. Guess what? Now I don't have any land. What else do I have to do? I will give you my service to be able to pay, to be able to buy that.
Was this everyone in Egypt? Or just?
If you didn't have money.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure there would have been more well-off people that were still paying with money, while these other people are having to give their land and themselves over to be slaves. Bondservant.
So
This is
basically now the Pharaoh owned all of them.
everything.
All
All the land, all the animals, all the people.
Seems like a good way to become a quick superpower.
Yeah. So, but with this bondservant, remember this is Titus, Peter, Paul. They all classified themselves as bondservants of Yeshua because they owed a debt that they could not pay. So they themselves were given into servitude for Yah. So all of Egypt was getting themselves into a debt that they could not repay because they owed. And now that he owns all the land, I'm giving you seed, but you still owe me a fifth of it. So that you see there, it's this debt that's coming. It's the cycle of the system.
Are they still in a famine?
Yeah, they're still in a famine. Now because of where they're at, there was still some planting that seems to be able to go on. And I think this is also kind of, we know we're coming out of this famine. So once we come out of it and you can plant, here's what the stipulations are going to be. But yeah, so they were constantly getting deeper and deeper. And if we think about that in today's society, how the system is set up, the system is not set up to help you get out. The system is set up to get you deeper and deeper and deeper into the system. So now Joseph has bought everything that is in Egypt for Pharaoh. And it would almost seem as if Joseph is taking advantage of Egypt. I mean, he's like, all right, you don't have any money? Give me your livestock. Oh, you don't have any livestock? Give me your land. Oh, you don't have any more land? Well, I own you now.
Seems like he was a bit of a shrewd businessman.
But maybe he is. Or maybe he's not. I'm going to give you my thoughts here in a minute. Here's my thoughts. Just from reading this. Again, this is just me. Joseph was a wise and kind ruler. We know that from from history, from reading the situation leading up to now. And even when people were selling themselves into slavery, they were glad. They were like, "Yes, you have saved us. Thank you so much." So if he was being extremely cruel, I don't see people reacting that way.
Right.
And I put they were glad to serve. So later, this is going to get them in trouble. And I wrote this: socialism always looks good on paper, and that's what they're getting themselves into, basically. Because ancient socialism, where the government controls everything, we're going to divide everything up.
Communism.
Yes. It always looks good on paper, right? And then I wrote this in here. So in Exodus 1:8, we're going to see this, and this is where it gets them in trouble. Exodus 1:8 says, "Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph." So he had, I believe, from what I read, that he was a wise, kind ruler that had good intentions to help everyone, and this was the way he was going to do it. But eventually, someone's going to rise up that doesn't know Joseph, that doesn't understand what he's set up, and is going to take advantage of it. So any questions on chapter 47? Any questions? Quiet crowd today. I need Olivia to start coming with some questions.
It's not really a question. It's kind of a side note to
Comment?
the whole thing. Through some of the reading that I was reading about when I was looking up what caused the famine during this time and everything. It's not much. I didn't really find out what caused it, but what I was reading through it is that during this 50-year, there's a 50-year period where these famines were very prevalent in this area.
Yeah.
And during this time, that Egypt was a powerhouse, great ruler, great armies and everything, and so being a part of Egypt was safety.
Yeah.
Because other people took advantage of these famines and were attacking and taking over.
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, it could have been like Jacob's livestock. They could have taken those, and a lot of the other. That's a lot. You see a lot of the empires at that time were crumbling.
Yes.
Because of all these famines. So.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, there's one of the verses that we talked about that a couple weeks ago, where when Joseph was interpreting the dream, and then he tells him what he needs to do to prepare for it. Mm. And we talked about how that a famine could cripple the economy and destroy an entire nation easily, because they didn't have the electronic banking system like we have now. They can keep things going. You know, if you ran out of food,
people die. So you don't have people to do the things.
If you don't have people to do the things, and you don't have people that are buying into the system, exchanging their goods for other people's goods, it's the entire economy will collapse. And like you were saying too, Darren, I think it's interesting too that Abraham saw famine, Isaac saw famine. It's like every generation there's this famine that's taking place. This one just seems to be a very extended time.
Right.
Okay, so question: how many years after the flood was this?
I'll have to pull up my chart to show you. Possibly.
Okay, well, kind of
I don't have my chart with me.
This is total hypothesis. But like when we studied Genesis, you know, we talked about basically that it was like a greenhouse. It was like it was perfect.
Yeah.
The temperature, like the ground, it watered itself. Like the mist would rise and watered all the plants. Well, after the flood, you had an entire environmental overhaul.
Ecosystem change. Yeah.
And so that kind of makes me wonder if that wasn't still kind of playing out this like shift in the environment settling itself down, that you have those like seasons of drought, etc. Just from it changing. You know, I know they talk about that with like the Ice Age and things, that those were like, it was like cyclical, like it would come and go and come and go. So
well, it's interesting.
Same thing.
It's interesting too, though, in that even to today in that area, they have the dry season and they have the rainy season. It's like yearly. Then it was like generationally they were having these famines. So it's almost like you're saying, like it was trying to balance itself out to where it's gotten to today, where it's 1 year the cycle just kind of loops itself around. Any other questions on 47? All right, well, let's look at this. I want to look at the story of Joseph as a shadow of what will come. Because we talk about, when we're reading in the Torah especially, that we can see so much picture type, so many shadows of what's going to come in it. And the story of Joseph is probably the most prevalent of all of them. There's so many things. Like we could spend an entire night just talking about these, but I just wanted to highlight a few that I thought really stood out to me, which I think are pretty cool. So, and like I said, next week we end this. We're ending Joseph and moving into Moses. So,
didn't he end now?
What?
Didn't he end this one because he did Pharaoh come up? Didn't know Joe?
Well, no, that was Exodus. I was throwing out.
Oh, okay.
As a future thing. All right, so. We know that Yah operates cyclical. You know, he operates in cycles. So we can see these things coming around. So let's look at the types and shadows that we see in the story of Joseph. All right? So, yeah.
Can you explain what a type and shadow is for those who may not know?
Yeah. Oh, so we can see in the story of Joseph, we're going to see things where we can look at this and go, oh, well, we can see how this played out in the life of Yeshua. Or we can see this and go, oh, well, this is a kind of a foretelling of something else is going to happen. So, and because we know Yah operates cyclically, then we know that things loop back around and they repeat themselves.
It's another way of saying a pattern, right?
Yeah, it's a pattern. Yeah, it creates a pattern. So let's look at a few of these. So Joseph was sent to his brothers by his father in Genesis 37. Right? Yeshua was sent to his brothers by his father. John 1:11 and John 8:29. And I put a few references in here just if you're interested in checking those out. Joseph was sold. And who headed that up? Judah. Judah was the ringleader that was like, hey, why not profit off of this? If we kill him, we don't make any money. But hey, we could sell him and make some money. Yeshua was sold out by Judas in Luke 22, which is actually interesting. That one was sold for 20 pieces of silver, one was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Think about inflation; it's probably about the same amount of money.
Didn't you tell me that Judas was the same name if you translated it?
Yes. Yes. So that's something interesting. Judas and Judah. Check. This is pretty cool. When I was looking this up, I was like, that's pretty neat. Didn't know that. So okay. So we know that to translate some things from Hebrew into Greek, they used what's called transliteration. There's not the same letters, so they have to come up with the closest thing. For instance, we all know this word, Yeshua, right? In Yeshua, they can't translate this directly into Greek, so they transliterate it into Jesus. I'm probably butchering this, so if there's anybody watching this on the video, I apologize. Jesus, which then translates to Jesus in English. That's where we get the translation. There is no direct translation from Yeshua to Jesus. It's a transliteration. They don't have, in Greek there's no y, so they translated this.
There's just no A in Jesus.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. I knew there was something wrong with that. Alright, so same thing. So we start out, that's Judah.
Right.
They don't have the same in Greek, so they translate it Iedas, which then translates in English Judas. So Judah sold Joseph, and Judah sold Yeshua.
That's really cool.
So it's the exact same person, the exact same name, not the exact same person, like not literally, that's thousands of years. But it's the exact same name in Hebrew. So Judah is Judas.
That's cool.
Same name. I was like,
Wow.
wait a second. I thought it was interesting. So going on, Joseph. Oh, yes, sir.
It's not really a question, but I just want to tell you that you have a typo.
I have lots of
my
typos. Where's my typo
It's
now?
Joseph was thrown. It's like the pointy throne.
Oh, yeah, I did do that. See, spell check doesn't check when you actually spell a word. That's the problem.
You spelled it right, just wrong word.
Yes, wrong word. Thank
Hey,
you.
nice catch.
Good job.
Hey, I'll give you
As soon as we're done, I'm going to change it so it's right the next time I use this slideshow.
You should send all your stuff to Langston first.
I know.
Proof it.
Langston, you going to proofread my stuff for me? Next week, I'm going to send you mine ahead of time so you can proof it. Okay?
Okay.
So Joseph was thrown into a pit. Yeshua was in a pit, the heart of the earth. I mean, then a pit was in the ground,
Right.
right? And we know that Yeshua was in the pit, in the heart of the earth. And so we know that also ties into the prophecy, just like when he said in Matthew, he said, they asked in this Matthew 12:40 is when he says, they asked him for a sign, and he said, the only sign you're going to get is the sign that out of the prophet Jonah, that just as Jonah was in the heart of the whale, the belly of the whale for 3 days, so will the Son of Man be in the belly of the earth. So they're both in a pit. Joseph had his royal cloak removed, Genesis 37:23, and Yeshua was stripped twice of his garments in Matthew 28. So he had his garments, they took him off, they put a royal coat on him, and then he was stripped of that before he was crucified. Joseph was raised up out of the pit. Oh, excuse me. Yeshua was raised out of the heart of the earth. Joseph was in prison with 2 others. Yeshua was hung between 2 others.
Whoa.
Whoa.
One was saved, one wasn't.
Yes.
Sorry. Was that coming?
Whoa.
No, it wasn't, but that's that's true. If you think about it, Joseph was in prison with 2. One of those was saved, the other one was murdered. The 2 thieves that Yeshua hung between, one was saved, one was not. The one realized who he was, and he said, surely today I'll be in paradise with you. The other one was yelling at him, like, if you're the Son of God, help us, save us too.
Save us and yourself.
Yeah. Joseph was made ruler of all of Egypt at age 30. Yeshua began his ministry at age 30.
Oh my god.
Like, and I'm just scratching the surface. Like, there's so many more things we could talk about with these parallels. Joseph was exalted to second in command over Egypt. It says that Yeshua is now seated at the right hand of the Father. The right hand was the second place command. It was the seat of authority. No one, I thought this was pretty cool. No one could do anything in Egypt without Joseph's permission.
Except for Pharaoh.
No one goes to the Father except through Yeshua. Judah, and this isn't specifically with Joseph, but this is in the story. Judah was willing to lay down his life to bring back Benjamin. The Jews have guarded the Torah and laid down their lives for it. This is to this day that is their heart and soul. They guard that, and then we lay down our lives every day for the same thing, for His word, to live in right standing with Him. So let's talk about the application. Man, we cruised to this one. We got lots of extra time to talk. Application. This is real simple today. Forgiveness. Erica, you touched on this earlier. Can we stop and see Yah's divine intervention in everything that's taking place in our life? How do we stand on the pH scale of forgiveness in our lives? And then I put this: just because Yah gives you a promise doesn't mean you won't have to go through difficulties to get it. I mean, it took Joseph 13 years to get to the place that he's at, where he's ruling over Egypt, going through pits and jails and accusations. And then we see him get exalted and then get his family to him, but they're still in a famine. Like, we have to keep that in the back of our minds. Like, he's done everything to this point to help them to sustain through this famine. They're still in a famine. There's still a famine going on. And then, does your life reflect that of a bondservant? So we talked about that. Paul, Titus, a lot of the apostles, they regarded themselves as bondservants of Yeshua. And their lives reflected that. They owed a debt they could not pay. And so they put their life into servitude for Yeshua. And I think we can all say we owe a debt we can't pay. So do our lives reflect that we're paying back that debt in our service to Yah? And I think that is it for today. Any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms on anything that we've talked about in this portion? It's the life of Joseph is incredible when we sit back and look at everything that he went through to get where he was at. Knowing the dreams that he had, knowing they were from Yah, knowing that things were going to happen, and yet he still had to walk out all of the difficulty, all the heartache, all the hardship that he had to go through to get there. And then we're going to see all that fulfilled next week, kind of wrapped up, and see how that plays out. Any other comments?